The honourable member Livingston MacLeod, followed by Calgary Varsity.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The deadline for disaster recovery applications is in 5 days, and Albertans want more critical information before making such life-altering decisions. Ever since this government decided it would attach caveats onto the properties of Albertans who accept DRP funding, flood-impacted Albertans have lived in fear of reduced property values if they accept a DRP payment. To the Associate Minister for Regional Recovery, please clarify, after accepting DRP assistance, how can someone with a property in a deemed floodway have the caveat placed on his or her title removed?
Honourable Associate Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That's right, and I appreciate the member giving me an opportunity to get the message out that those that have not applied for disaster recovery program should do so by the end of this month. Because they apply, it doesn't necessarily mean that they have to take the money. It's not until they take the money from the program, if they live in a floodway, that then they would have a caveat on their property if they live in the floodway. But until they take the money, they do not get that caveat. The deadline is just to signal their intent or possibility that they would be eligible for that particular program.
Honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That wasn't quite the question, but given that DRP assistance is intended to help, not hurt, can the minister explain how his government will protect Albertans from adverse treatment by banks and insurance company and the like after they've had a caveat placed on their title?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this government made a decision, a clear decision, after the floods to try to get people that live in floodways, those that want to develop in floodways. We made a clear decision not to allow that moving forward. And we want to provide people with the fair option of having that decision to move out of the floodway. As I've mentioned in this Assembly before, Mr. Speaker, there are some very serious consequences, both when it comes to future financial liability to taxpayers and public safety consequences for allowing development to continue in floodways, and that's the policy that this government decided to make.
Honourable member.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Considering this deadline and that this government hasn't updated its flood maps and that it plans to implement flood mitigation measures as well, which will further alter the floodways, does the minister recognize forcing Albertans to make this decision before updating the flood maps is wrong?
Mr. Speaker, it's very clear that this member completely does not understand the use of flood maps and this particular policy. Mr. Speaker, the flood maps are put in place. They're a planning tool that allows us to make these decisions as well as to do the mitigation that's required. Just because, Mr. Speaker, you have mitigation in place doesn't mean that you're no longer in the floodway. Sometimes those mitigation measures fail, and that puts those people in harm's way and leaves the government and the taxpayers with future financial liabilities. That's what we're trying to get away from, Mr. Speaker.